Welcome, everyone. My name is Peter Young, and I'm president of Societe de Chimie Industrielle and also CEO of Young & Partners, the investment bank. And I want to welcome you all to what I think is going to be a wonderful webcast with our speaker from Kraton. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about Societe, but also upcoming events. And then I'm going to turn it over to Federico Manila. Federico and Jim Weatherall were the ones who organized today's speaker. And so Federico will provide the introduction and will also moderate the Q&A. We'll end promptly at 2 o'clock to be respectful to everyone's schedules, but I think it's going to be an interesting hour. For those of you who don't know about Societe, it's a 102-year-old organization. And it focuses on a couple of things. One is this webcast is part of, which is to help educate people in the industry and related to the industry in the kinds of issues that we all think are very important, like today's, whether it's about sustainability or plastics recycling or the state of the economy or M&A. We try to cover topics that those people who are following the industry or in the industry really feel that they want to have more information. The second part of what we do is we have an extensive effort related to students who are studying chemistry and chemical engineering and life sciences. And there we provide research scholarships as well as mentor programs. And we include these wonderful students in our activities so they meet people. And then this Friday, for example, we have a career fair and forum where we're matching students with companies. And the last thing is to recognize people who contributed to the industry. And so we have the very famous International Palladium Medal Award, which is usually held at a dinner in a ballroom hotel. We have a number of different things. As far as up and coming events, I just want to tell you about some of the very exciting webcasts that we're going to hold. On Wednesday, April 7th, we have the president and also a senior vice president of two of the leading logistics companies who will talk about the supply chain and logistics crisis, which is truly a crisis affecting everyone in the industry. And one is the COO of BDP and the other is a senior vice president of Odyssey, both well-known supply chain and logistics companies. That's on April 7th from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. On April 21st, we have similarly a very important webcast. It's called the ESG Movement, Where Are We Headed? And there we have three people from industry and experts who will talk about the issues there. And this is clearly very important since all companies now have to really focus on that. On May 6th, we're going to have a discussion group on ESG. And then on May 12th, we'll have the CEO of Integris, who will talk about success through unconventional wisdom. So that's just the programs for the next 2 months. And we hope to see many of you at these events. And you can register via our website, which is societe.org. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Federico Manila. Federico is not only the co-organizer of today's webcast, but he's a board member and has served in different committees over the last couple of years. So Federico, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. And it's particularly my pleasure to introduce Marcello Boldrini, who is the president of the chemical segment of Houghton. He is an experienced chemical executive. He has had responsibility with a number of other firms, ranging from Houghton to Ashland, the Quaker, and the like. Right now, Kraton's chemical segment is under his purview, let's say. He's been there since 2017, I believe. And we are delighted to have him to really talk about sustainable solutions and other innovations in a segment that he has been responsible for. So the way that this would work is that you're gonna see the presentation is gonna be shared the screen by Marcello. You can send via chat questions, and we'll collate the question and try to answer them at the end. And we're gonna try to end promptly at 2 p.m. So welcome to Marcello, and I'll leave it up to him to start the presentation.
Thank you, Enrico, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me start sharing my screen. So hopefully you will be able to see that in a minute. So is it okay, Federico? Can people see the screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. Fantastic. So first of all, thanks for inviting me to speak to this distinguished audience about a topic which is near and dear to my heart, and which is really shifting from being a nice thing to do to a business imperative, which is sustainability. Let's move to the next slide and talk briefly about the agenda for today. So we're gonna spend a few minutes introducing Kraton, speaking about the global challenge, how sustainability creates value, how Kraton integrates sustainability, stakeholder expectations, and sustainability reporting, big topic in these days, changing reporting landscape, and then we'll give a couple of examples of how Kraton embraces sustainability from a product offering standpoint. Speaking of Kraton, please let me allow to briefly introduce my company. Kraton is a $1.8 billion global specialty chemical company. We develop, manufacture, and market bio-based chemicals and specialty polymers. Innovation is at the heart of Kraton, and we have 7 innovation centers globally and invest over $40 million annually in R&D. We have a global footprint with over 6,000 suppliers and 700 customers, which really makes our supply chain complex and highlights why working on sustainability with our suppliers is extremely important. I also want to mention a very important milestones in our journey as a company, which was the acquisition of Arizona Chemical in 2016, which effectively doubled the size of Kraton. Moving to the next slide, we live in a complex, rapidly changing world characterized by significant global trends that drive both opportunities and challenges for society. For Kraton and the chemical industry, we believe 6 global trends are critical. First one, demographics. By 2050, the United Nations expects the global population to grow to approximately 9.5 billion people. The second one, economic prosperity. Millions of people will be lifted out of poverty, at least we definitely hope so, increasing living standards and driving demand for products and services. When we look at third and fourth, climate change and resource scarcity. The use of limited resources to support a growing population drives environmental impacts like climate change. While these impacts create physical risks to human well-being, they also present an economic concern as resources are increasingly scarce. Governments and regulators try to tackle these challenges through new policies, commitments, and regulations. For example, the chemical industry is energy intensive, and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is increasingly expected. We look at globalized and complex supply chains, which present risks relating to human rights, child labor, environmental and anti-corruption issues, as well as timely availability of products and services. We just heard Peter talking about an upcoming seminars on the logistic challenges that the industry is facing, and it's really a very, very important topic right now. And then last but not least, stakeholder expectations. From investors to customers and to governments worldwide, there is an increased stakeholder demand for sustainability management, sustainable solutions, and transparency of reporting's non-financial metrics, including governance, environmental, and social. So let's look at how those 6 global trends have an impact on business, both in terms of risks and opportunities. Key impacts include rising operating costs, raw materials costs driven up by supply demand, and true cost of water or carbon reflected in energy prices. We see new regulations, physical and weather changes, changes in consumer preferences, resource constraints. So depending on how companies deal with these impacts, they can become either risks or opportunities, like, for example, new products and services, access to capital, and reputation. Let's look at the main stakeholders. We group them into 4 categories: regulators and communities, people, customers, and investors. What do they expect from us? Regulators expect carbon neutrality by 2050, that was the Paris Treaty, and are introducing new regulations to cut emissions and put a price on carbon. People expect clear purpose, vision, and commitment to sustainability, safety, diversity, equality, and inclusion, treating all with dignity and respect. Customers and suppliers are looking at low carbon footprint, renewable, recyclable solutions, low supply chain risks. And lastly, again, but not least, investors ask for the integration of sustainability into business strategy with clear ESG targets and transparent reporting. As a fact, in the United States, $1 out of 3 invested professionally are invested according to ESG principles. So in summary, a sustainable business is capable of meeting the expectations of all its stakeholders now and in the future. And those who have a sustainable business will achieve improved productivity, better risk management, growth, create shareholder value, and attract talent and investors. So what is society's response to the global sustainability challenge? The 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs, are a response by society to the global challenges we are facing. The SDGs were agreed upon and adopted by more than 190 governments. They are ambitious goals at the planetary scale. These 17 goals have defined 169 targets measured by 232 indicators. Society expects companies to play a role in solving these challenges. At Kraton, we are committed to be part of the solution and make a positive difference through safe, compliant, socially and environmentally sound operations. So, using the Kraton example, let's briefly look at how companies can use the SDGs to prioritize and focus their sustainability actions. We realized that we cannot do all these goals. So we initially focused on 6 SDGs, and I want to emphasize initially focused because I'm sure that we will expand on that, that are most material to Kraton and clearly interlink with our sustainability ambitions and business model. We see our contribution to the goal number 9, innovation, as an enabler to deliver on the other goals. As a specialty chemical company, the heart of specialty is innovation. Innovation drives organic growth into more specialized, diversified products and solutions that enable customers to meet their company goals while contributing to the SDGs. Goal number 3, with focus on health and well-being, is very important to us. We want everyone to go home safe every day and be a responsible citizen within our communities. Goal number 8, decent work and economic growth. We promote proper labor standards and respect for human rights, as well as equal opportunities. We can actively contribute to goal number 6 clean water by fostering water stewardship and having an efficient and effective water management in operations. And then goals 12 and 13, responsible consumption and production and climate action, we see our role again as enablers. Our bio-based low carbon solutions contribute to climate action goal 13, offering to our customers a bio-based alternative, which enables them reducing their carbon emissions in their products. In our polymer business, our Circular Plus products offer a solution to recycle and upcycle a waste plastic stream, which in turn plays a role in driving circular economy, all while we continue to reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions in our operations. Let's talk about the sustainability reporting landscape, a very, very active topic right now. It consists of a supply and a demand side, and it incorporates many actors. Governments and regulators among those actors are the most active in issuing increasing reporting requirements and guidance. Just a couple of weeks ago, the SEC laid out its climate and ESG-oriented agenda, for example. And industry associations like the American Chemistry Council are also being more and more active. Requirements can be voluntary and mandatory. Example of requirements are the UNG Compact, the Sustainable Development Goals, or the European Non-Financial Reporting Directive issued in 2019. Other actors, reporting entities, like Kraton, for example, must choose a reporting framework and report accordingly. So those reporting frameworks seek to help reporters to meet the new requirements that are set. For example, we have Global Reporting Initiative Standards, also known as GRI, which is the most commonly adopted in these days. But we have others, like, for example, Sustainability Accounting Standard Boards, which is called like SASB. We also have International Integrated Reporting Council, and one that is gaining a lot more traction in these days is a Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, TCFD. So you can see here that the problem is that there are a number of different reporting standards. They have interlinkages on what to report, but the challenge is which report framework should be applicable for a specific company when taking into consideration their industry, their strategy, and their size. As companies embark on the journey of sustainability reporting, they must, one, choose from the growing number of frameworks and tools available to them, focus on reporting sustainability topics that are material to the business and their stakeholders, and be careful to avoid greenwashing. And then finally, in the picture, we also have assurance providers and auditing companies and raters who will become more and more involved as regulation and investors will demand more public, non-financial information. So I want to leave this slide with a comment, which is that today there is a need for harmonization in the reporting landscape. And now the rating agencies, like, for example, EcoVadis and CDP, use the data in scoring companies' performance. So talking about managing your sustainability, how can companies understand where they are with this program? Rating agencies, as highlighted in the previous slide, can be very helpful in providing an assessment. And we have chosen to join EcoVadis, that is a globally recognized independent rating agency for sustainability management systems. Kraton's sustainability management system was rated as advanced by EcoVadis, and we have achieved EcoVadis Gold rating in 2020. EcoVadis assesses companies across 4 themes: environmental, labor and human rights, sustainable procurement, and ethics. I mentioned earlier that supply chains are often complex. We cannot solve sustainability alone, so therefore it is important that we engage as an industry to collaborate to drive sustainability. We specifically are working through the TFS platform, Together for Sustainability, which is a sector initiative created by the chemical companies with the goal of assessing, auditing, and improving the sustainability practices within their global supply chains. So, in summary, we believe that our ability to create long-term value in a resource-constrained world depends on operating our business in a sustainable manner, environmentally, socially, and through proper governance. We believe that incorporating sustainability into how we develop, manufacture, and market our products will contribute to growth, improve productivity, and risk reduction. Going into the closing sections of my presentation, I will give some examples on how we have addressed sustainability at Kraton. When many companies start looking at sustainability and what it means to them, they usually start looking at their own operations. This is logical, because that is where companies have the most control and an ability to change things. For example, for us, it's critical that everyone goes home safe every day, that we have clear greenhouse gas reduction targets, and we focus on compliance 100% of the time. It quickly became clear, though, that getting our house in order is not enough. You also need to look upstream, because we cannot make sustainability claims if we disregard or don't understand what our suppliers, whom we depend on, are doing. We talked earlier that global supply chains are complex and pose risks. So that is why we started to engage our suppliers on topics like ethics, human rights, and sourcing practices, expecting them to commit to our policies, assessing their sustainability performance, and foster a spirit of continuous improvement. And finally, you also need to look downstream to your customers, as they are increasingly eager to understand how our innovation capabilities and sustainable solutions can help them reach their sustainability goals. So, speaking of customers, let me briefly talk about our sustainability offerings. Our pine chemical business provides many benefits compared to the fossil fuel-based alternatives, as they are bio-based, sourced from responsibly managed forests, do not compete for land with food crops, are not genetically modified, do not require land use change. Pine chemicals have lower carbon footprint than hydrocarbon-based alternatives. By providing sustainable solutions to our customers, we enable them to drive bioeconomy, which is the economy based on renewable raw materials, and play a part in mitigating climate change. When it comes to our polymer business, we realize that plastics are an important material in our economy. Modern life is unthinkable without them. As a relatively cheap and versatile material, the use of plastic has grown exponentially over the past century. At the same time, when ending up in waste or not being properly recycled, it has a negative impact on the environment and the health of the living beings. Different plastic streams create specific challenges for waste management, for recycling, and reusing of the material. Our Circular Plus can offer compatibility of different plastic waste streams and their upcycling and reuse for high value added applications. In addition, it enables end-of-life recyclability, thus closing the loop for circular economy to reuse raw materials. So, in closing this presentation, I want to leave you with a final thought to reiterate why sustainability is important to business, and that is the economic argument. When a company successfully embeds sustainability in its strategy and practice, it will see a positive impact on several fronts, like reputation and corporate brand, attracting talent and investors, growth and improved productivity, which ultimately drive greater profitability, risk reduction which can foster higher corporate valuation and a lower cost of capital. In that way, sustainability, while making a positive difference, deliver values for customers, employees, shareholders, and communities alike. And I will hand it over to Federico for questions. Thank you for listening to me.
I encourage everybody to use the chat function to provide questions, which we can share. Let me ask you, Marcello, as you and Kraton developed this internal map and plan, what were the challenges that you found more difficult, and what were the parameters, if any, that you had organized?
I think that you start with sustainability, as I said before, from simple targets to reduce emissions, energy, water, and those are very logical steps because it's also driving efficiencies, and at the end immediately see the impact on the bottom line. Then you start looking at how other functions can also be part of sustainability, and that's where the challenge becomes, because you start putting targets and goals that are not immediately quantifiable. And that really requires a lot of understanding and joining forces together to achieve those goals. So it's really, having all the functions on board to support your goals and sustainability. But at the end of the day, it starts with the vision from the top management of the company, from the CEO and the board, that needs to drive the direction for which the company needs to go. And then you can align under that vision.
And how can you assess, if you want, the trade-offs between the achievement of the sustainability goals and the economic impact? Because there is a cost to the profits of Kraton.
Absolutely, that's a great question, Federico, and it's one I think center of everybody's mind right now. As you stretch out goals longer term, the more difficult that becomes. So think about the goal of zero emission by 2050. I mean, it's easy to say, and but how you get there? What does it mean? What are the intermediate steps? How much do you need to invest? How you put milestones in place? So it's a very, very iterative process that you need to go through, and keeping the end goal in mind, setting smaller goals along the way that will get you there, and assess the implications and the cost for those things to be done.
Internally, how did you structure the function that you have? Because are there people that are devoted to it? Do you take them from different parts of the company, and how can you evaluate them? Do you have internal metrics? Just to understand how you put in place this.
Yeah, again, great question. So we have a governance system in place. So it starts with the board, that you have part of the committee on the board that monitors sustainability. Then we have a council, a sustainability council, in which each functional leader, the part of the top management of the company is sitting. So that's where the decisions are made. And then you have functional champions in each function, which are the one responsible for actually doing the work. So it's a very interconnected governance system in place. It starts with the board, then you got the council, and then you got the champions working on the different sustainability. And then each of them will have their own goals and KPIs that are measured upon.
And how often does the council meet?
We meet every quarter.
We have a question from the audience. Does implementing sustainability involve major changes in the production process? For instance, you can take as an example, what kind of changes are made to implement sustainability in the manufacturing process? Well, what has changed and what does it require?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you have, for example, we use solvents in our polymer manufacturing. So part of the process technology is how can you reduce the amount of solvents that you use in your manufacturing process? So engineering and technology are playing a big role. And then if you think about longer term, you design solutions and products that ultimately will have less need for energy to be produced, that can help your customers to reduce their own targets for sustainability. So absolutely, manufacturing is vital, very important, and it goes hand in hand with technology, because process technology is also a very important pillar to achieve those goals.
Another question, which is more outward facing. So how can you convince companies who say that the customers are not demanding sustainable products to commit to sustainability principles? Because there is a cost maybe associated with sustainability, and you have the danger that some companies who are not playing with the same rules or not focusing on the same things may actually go ahead.
I agree with you. It's an ongoing challenge and it's an ongoing battle. I mean, I think you have to be, stick to your values, first of all. So decide what you want to do. And there's always going to be some outliers. I mean, I'm not going to go down the path of saying who's going to be doing that or who's not going to be doing that. But, some customers, sometimes they speak a good game, but they don't really do the same. Suppliers may be the same. Competition may be the same. But I think you have to stick to your own values and take a step at a time. So do what's right for you, for your company. And, don't worry about the rest, because it will come. It will eventually come. I mean, the pressure is mounting. You got regulators, you got governments. Everybody is going in this direction. Some will be faster adopters, some will be slower adopters, but stick to your values, do what's right for you.
From a management point of view, how can you measure senior management's performance on profit and revenue growth measures, for instance, as compared to sustainability parameters? Like if you are a manager, you can say reach those ROIs or so, and then how do you measure the profitability? Do you have goals, and how do you reward people?
Yeah. So the internal goals, I mean, when it comes to efficiency measures in manufacturing, those are easy targets to set, right? Because if you say I want to reduce water usage, I mean, you can measure that. And then you have to have the cost benefit analysis for those kind of things to happen. But also when you're launching new products, you can, motivate and set goals for a new product launch. We have, for example, a new family of rosin esters, which we call Revolution, that is supposed to, attack and replace hydrocarbon tackifiers. So we have very specific targets that we give to our sales team to achieve those sales for these new programs. So it's really encompassing all the functions. I mean, it's a very pervasive goal system that you need to put in place and understand the implications. And then whenever there's an investment to be made, I think the bigger the investment, that's why you have a council in place, because you need to decide if the trade-off makes sense or not. And ultimately, the board needs to decide if the investment makes sense or not. So depending on the size of the investment. So that's why having a good governance system in place ensure that you can actually implement your strategy.
Did you use consulting firms or somebody else?
A little bit in the beginning, especially for benchmarking data, but we do most of our work internally.
One of the questions is, why is GMO or non-GMO even relevant to sustainability when it is an enabling technology to improve products and processes?
Well, we don't really deal with GMO or non-GMO in our business, so I'm not really able to comment on that. I can say that our pine chemical offering is for sure sustainable. So that's what we focus on. I mean, if it's the pine trees in my background, if you think about our suppliers, they are all responsible managers of forest as well. So all these forests are certified. We have certification to the tree, if you like, that we're not using land that is used for other food production, and we're not using we're not devastating the land as well. So everything is done in a responsible way, all through the supply chain and through certifications and accountability and traceability, if you like.
Another question is, if you could magically have access to any data or measuring instrument, what would be your dream data set? What would you like to have if you could have it to help you in this?
I think the biggest challenge is what we call life cycle analysis of a products and understanding from really cradle to crate, what is the footprint of that product? And it's very, very difficult today because a chemical product starts from a tree, ends up in a tire, and then gets recycled. I mean, to keep track of the real footprint is very difficult. So most of the time you have to decide arbitrarily where you put the gates for that measurement. But if you, in theory, have no gates, then you really achieve your sustainability goals and targets for humanity. But that's almost impossible.
One of the competitive advantages that some people have discussed has been some sort of seal of approval of being truly sustainable, some independent, the same way as in the food world,
Yep.
you have certified organic or whatever. I don't know which organization could provide that seal, but it's something that right now there is a relatively varied definition of this. Would you be in favor of setting one up, and how would best, have you thought about doing this?
I think the more transparency and objectivity you have, the better you are. So, making false statement or claims does not help anybody. And I mean, the good news is that there are very, relevancy gained by those rating agencies. So it's not just the products, it's the system, the company. As I mentioned before, EcoVadis is one, CDP is another one. So those are becoming prominent ways and platforms that companies get rated. And those are independent auditors. So it's almost becoming like a certification, if you like. And then on the product side, for example, we can use the label bio-based, which is an approved certified label that we can put on our products on the pine chemical side. So there are a lot of things in place out there which can, objectively tell you what you're talking about or dealing with.
So you actually use that in labeling your products?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there any technology that is only at the beginning today that you are aware of that has still to be developed and that you think could be helpful in this, or new, looking beyond the first 2 or 3 years, but looking down there, that you can imagine being relevant as you continue in this growth?
Well, I'm just going to stick to the example of the trees. I mean, the amount of chemicals in a tree is unbelievable. So if you can find ways to, in a sustainable way, use more of the non-food slated crop to make chemicals, that's great. I mean, there's still a lot of waste in even in pine. I mean, there's an opportunity to use much more. There are, for example, a big byproduct is lignin, and there's a lot of efforts from the major players in the industry to use lignin for purposes rather than burning and recycling in terms of energy. So, and this is just at the very beginning, because those are very difficult molecules to break down and replay with. But yes, I mean, think about a pine tree, you have the entire chemistry set at your end tips. Yes, absolutely. So a lot of work to be done still, but lots of possibilities.
And do you compare yourself to some of your competitors in measuring this particular sustainability progress? And if so, what are the metrics that are more relevant to you? Some of them are hidden, I'm sure, because in the overall, you can see a pricing, but then, you can try to reverse engineer their production process. Right?
Listen, if a competitor shows that it's better and more sustainable than me, I'm just happy about it, because it means that I have another goal and target to get to. So if the whole industry goes that direction, it's just good for everybody. And I have multiple examples of competitors in the space that are doing a tremendous job in this sense. So from a supplier standpoint, so across the supply chain, I think sustainability is really a big effort from everybody. And you keep reading about them achieving ratings and succeeding in meeting goals and expectations. I think that's just great. It's fantastic for the whole industry.
You know that some other chemical companies have gotten together, for instance, in the Plastics Council or similar, so to address perceived issues and to try to provide a common front. Do you see this in some of the subsectors in Kraton's own business?
Yeah, I mean, for the pine chemical, there's a Pine Chemical Association that works together on these kind of issues. So it exists, and again includes suppliers and users and downstream customers sometimes as well. So yes, the association is there and alive.
Are there also participants in the same? One idea is that the people in the US and Europe may be more sensitive, and people in other parts of the world will be less sensitive to sustainability. How do you compare the European, American, if you want, approach versus Chinese, Indian, other parts of the world?
You know, sustainability, I think it's is gaining global traction, and every region has its own focus based on opportunities and challenges, if you like. So, for example, I mean, if you think about the Nordic countries in Europe, where they have 80% of the territory covered by pine trees, clearly their focus is on pine trees, and they're very, very strong on sustainability around those metrics. In other areas, the importance may be different. So, as I said before, I believe every country will drive towards sustainability. There may be some differences in how they try to set their goals and targets based on resources, based on needs and priorities of those needs. It's a trend. It's going to go at different speed in different places, but it's not stopping.
Do you see government playing a stronger role, imposing limits, imposing regulations, and if so, how do you envision this? Because that may have an impact on
pressure is mounting from both the government and all the agencies. I mean, if you read the agenda today, in every major agency agenda, climate change is top of the list. I mentioned before the SEC, they're going to try to create like a new GAAP standard for environmental, for sustainability disclosure. Investors are demanding their invested companies to disclose more information on sustainability. You have the European Union setting targets, like for example, RED II in terms of energy reductions in transportation. So every government and every agency, I think this is top of mind of all of them. And I think companies like us needs to be thinking right now what it means for them, what it takes for them to get there, not to be surprised down the road.
Have you been surprised by the capital expenditures requirement to fulfill this?
No, not so far. I mean, I would say that we have done a good job at planning things ahead. And again, there could be an acceleration from regulators and governments, and that may require some more thinking. I mean, the biggest, I think, challenge coming upon us and in the industry is the scenario planning according to the climate changes. So understanding what you need to do in case of climate changes and plan your strategy in your long-term plan based on potential scenarios of climate changes. That may require that you think about investments, that you think about different footprints. So I think that's going to be a very interesting exercise to come.
I am also encouraging other members of the audience to submit their questions. I don't want to be the only one talking. Obviously, I enjoy the conversation, but happy to see that. A few things. What are the pushbacks you've seen in pursuing an ESG agenda, and how did you address it?
The pushback is always the time horizon. I mean, if you're just focused on maximizing your EBITDA in a quarter, and that's all the way you think, it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, you have to think longer term, and to me, that's something that needs to be wrestled with by every company. It's the long-term objective and in a sense investments to get the benefit down the road versus the short-term needs to demonstrate results.
In a question is expandable polystyrene EPS waste has a very large visible footprint in the environment. So when you see it, it is out there and has to be dealt with. What is the current benchmark that the industry is using and KPI for biodegradable expandable polystyrene? Is there any?
I am afraid I cannot answer that question. I mean, this is really not part of my knowledge, so I wouldn't venture on elaborating on something that I'm not really too familiar with. I'm sorry.
Do you have any criteria for suppliers?
Absolutely.
And sustainability driven, is it part of how you choose them?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, we are part of this platform, which is called Together for Sustainability. There's quite a big number of chemical companies on this platform. We've been, proud enough to be invited to be part of that platform. And there's criteria from, if you think about all these goals that we talked about. So governance, ethics, sustainability of supply chain. These are all metrics that are being part of the evaluation of suppliers that we actually use. And so I encourage you to look at that platform as a good guidance for how to deal with your suppliers.
For a US producer, another question, that previously met the requirements for the ACC Responsible Care Certificate. What is different now? What is new? What has been added on top of this? And how you're running things differently?
ACC, funny that has been asked, because they're just trying to gather more information right now in a proactive way to be able to present the chemical industry in a more positive way in the eyes of the external investors and communities. So ACC is playing a big role. There's a task force, there's a committee in place, and is actually expanding on what already is being done and making it even more transparent to the public, if you like. So all these disclosures and things that are required by regulations are becoming very well known by the ACC.
Another question is the Kraton. You are, as a company, you are a good mix of fine chemicals and also petrochemical based ingredients. How do you think about investments? More goes to the fine chemicals because they're more sustainable, or what about even in the polymer side? Do you select applications that are more sustainable, deselect some that are not as recyclable?
Yeah, I mean, we don't think about investments in that way. We just think investments about returns, and part of the returns calculation is your sustainability footprint for sure. As I mentioned before, we have a new offering on the polymer side of the business, as we call it, which is called Circular Plus, which is a styrene block copolymer that enables recycling of plastic. So that's an area we're investing heavily from an R&D and manufacturing standpoint, because we believe has very good, contributor to the circular economy for the industry. So that's an example where we invest on the plastic side of the business. On the other end, we keep investing on our fine chemicals to upgrade our facilities and really also innovate in the space and find more ways to use the fine chemicals molecules in different applications that replace hydrocarbons. So investments goes in both ways, and sustainability is really becoming a very important lens through which we select those investments.
Bio-based chemicals are experiencing a renewed hype in the capital markets. People investing in it, people at all levels, from venture capital above. Do you see a change in demand for your fine chemical products because of the potential competition from bio-based and other alternatives?
So we are bio-based. right? So, and not all chemicals have the same route. So there's going to be multiple ways to get bio-based chemicals produced. And I think there's going to be a lot of traction in the market for bio-based solutions, because clearly hydrocarbons are, again, important today, will continue to be important, but from a carbon footprint standpoint, they're not comparable. So the solutions, the bio-based solutions, will continue to drive customers to look into that direction. You only have to pay attention that those do not go against other primary use for the crop. So if you are taking food away to make a chemical, that's probably not a great thing. So you got to be careful on how you go about it.
Do you have an estimate of your cost to meet sustainable cost in general? So like you have an R&D percentage that you allocate to sustainability, or how do you define in terms of quantity, if you can define it that way?
I mean, we look at a budget for investments for the year, and a part of that is because we are trying to develop sustainability programs. So yes, we look at that, and I cannot tell you how much we do, but clearly we look at that way. Yes.
And you work with lobbyist, legislative head, judicial advocacy. You work with people that can help you arrive in all the countries, not just in the US, in order to help regulate or favor or.
Yeah, we tend to work with the chemical associations. Like in Europe, we work with CEFIC, and in the US, we work with the ACC, and also we work with the specific industry associations, like in the pine chemical business, for example, the Adhesives and Sealants Council or the Pine Chemical Association. So we tend to work with those associations for the efforts of promoting the sustainability of our offerings.
A broader question: how do you see large traditional manufacturers of chemical products achieving ESG goals? Do you think there will be more in-house? There will be more acquisitions? There would be, how much is controlling, if you want, or controllable to the R&D spending in ESG versus in-house or through other acquisitions or disruptive investments?
I don't know specific, but I know for sure that as those mandates become more and more important, companies will look at the typical ways to achieve those, which is both a combination of organic growth and acquisition. So we see some examples already of acquisitions that are driven by sustainability. So we will see more of that, I'm sure. And again, it's just a matter of time before all these targets become more transparent. And once they're more transparent, and they become almost a must-have. So you'll see more of that. And then again, investors are clearly putting dollars into more sustainable, transparent companies than not. So it's coming from all angles, if you like: investors, regulators, suppliers, customers. So it's coming.
One other question is coming at the heel of a difficult year last year, 2020. Do you think that there was, it's also important to have, to be known for the sustainable effort. You have a reputational risk to protect. But did you feel any pressure to relax some of your sustainable actions, if you want, when you're faced with financial pressure, losses, or the like? I mean, how strong is this feeling of continuing to invest in sustainability in the face of adversity?
I think it's even stronger if you allow, Federico, because think about one of the aspects that we talked about sustainability, which is society and communities. I mean, safety and ability to practice is going to be paramount. So you want to make sure that you continue to invest in those things, especially in times where we had last year and continue to see this year of the COVID situation. So we never took the foot off the accelerator in any time. Actually, we focused even more on the safety of our people in the plants, in the labs, in the offices. So that's clearly was very important for us.
Another question has been about natural-based products which require no or minimum processing. It says, what about natural-based products which require no or minimum processing? Lower carbon footprint, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you, yeah.
I mean, again, I'm more of an expert of the fine chemical side, so I'm not able to really comment too much on others. But there's always going to be some energy intensity in the chemical processing. So if you are able to come up with a less energy intensive process to transform those molecules into the final applications, the better you are. That's for sure. So we don't have a lot of. I mean, actually, we're a positive contributor to the overall CO2 footprint, but there could be possible ways that looking ahead, that you reduce your energy intensity for processing those products.
Okay. We have only a few more minutes before we conclude our program, but I again encouraging people, if there are specific questions, we have time for a couple more if anybody wants to point them out. And is there anything else, Marcello, that you wanted to share with us about your experience with this? Obviously, you are at the forefront at Kraton.
I mean, I really enjoy. It's something that is, as I mentioned before, very close to my heart, and I think it's the right thing to do on multiple levels. So I'm very grateful that Kraton gave me an opportunity to work on sustainability, and it's just an enjoyment.
Was there any regrets? Anything you went and you did and it did not work out that you regret it, or any disappointment in? It's a story of success today, but it maybe wasn't predetermined. Anything you want to share? Lesson learned with us?
I mean, lesson learned is anytime you look back, you think you can have done things better. So I don't know if there was a big aha moment. Lots of small ahas for sure, but we learn from them and we move forward. So I think that's normal.
Well, I don't see any more questions that you've not answered. If anybody has, it's the last chance to address them. I do think this has been a very good dialogue. In general, we have presentations that, if with the permission of the speaker, we put in our member-only website section. So those will be available for people who join the Societe. I think we are getting close to the deadline, the 2 o'clock deadline, New York time. Any other question before we conclude our program? And I really thought this was not only timely, but also extremely well presented. And I appreciate Marcello's time and really Kraton's ability to deliver on this on an institutional basis. As you said, it's not one person, but it has to be all the way from the board and the company. So I would we be able to get your presentation, to add your presentation to our website?
Already, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you all. And look forward to the other programs that Peter has highlighted. Please log in. The website is www.societe.org. And we look forward to having other opportunities to continue. And if there are specific questions, please don't hesitate to call us and we'll try to address them separately.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure being here, and talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.